I sat in the lawyer's office staring at the document in front of me. My grandfather had just passed away 2 weeks ago, and I was still processing the loss. Then I heard the number. $4,850,000. Everything went to me, not a single dollar to my parents. Just me. I thought it was Grandpa Walter's final gift, his way of making sure I could finally chase my business dreams. But what I did not know was that this inheritance would turn my family into something I barely recognized. Before we get into what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching this from. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you are finding this story interesting, so far hit that like button and subscribe, because what happened next with my parents will make you question everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. Let me back up and tell you about my relationship with Grandpa Walter. When I was 12 years old, my parents got divorced. My dad, Richard, was a lawyer who cared more about billable hours than bedtime stories. My mom, Patricia, remarried some wealthy guy and made it clear that having a kid around would cramp her new lifestyle. Neither of them wanted me. That is not an exaggeration. They literally argued in court about who would have to take me. So my grandfather stepped in. Grandpa Walter lived in a small house on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. He was a retired carpenter who had spent his whole life building things with his hands and saving every penny he could. His house smelled like sawdust and coffee, and it became my home for the next 15 years. Grandpa taught me everything: how to fix a car engine, how to build a bookshelf from scratch, how to plant tomatoes in the backyard. But most importantly, he taught me that love is not about blood. It is about showing up. Every single day he showed up for me. When I graduated high school, he was there in the front row, cheering louder than anyone. When I got accepted into college to study business, he helped me apply for scholarships and worked extra jobs to help with what the scholarships did not cover. He never had much money, but he gave me everything that mattered. I worked part-time jobs all through college to support myself because I did not want to burden him. We were a team. He was the only father I ever really had. When I finished my degree and started working at a small tech startup downtown, Grandpa was so proud. He would call me every Sunday morning just to hear about my week. Then one Tuesday morning, I got the call from the hospital. Heart attack. Massive. He was gone before I even got there. I felt like someone had ripped a hole in my chest. The funeral was small. Just me, some of his old carpenter buddies, and a few neighbors. My parents did not even bother to show up. 2 days after the funeral, I met with Mr. Harrison, Grandpa's lawyer. That is when I learned about the inheritance. $4,850,000. I could barely process it. Grandpa had been so frugal, so careful. I knew he had savings, but I had no idea it was this much. He had invested wisely over the decades, lived simply, and apparently planned everything down to the last detail. Mr. Harrison handed me the will. It was clear. Everything went to me. The house, the savings, the investment accounts, all of it. There was a handwritten note attached. It said, "Ahmad, use this to build the life you deserve. You are the son I wish I had raised from the start. Do not let anyone take this from you." I sat in my small rented apartment that night, overwhelmed. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me felt grateful. Mostly, I just missed him. Then I made the mistake of calling my parents to let them know about his passing. My dad answered on the second ring. His voice was cold, professional. "I heard," he said. "What about the estate?" Not "how are you doing, son?" Not "I am sorry for your loss." Just straight to business. I told him the truth. Grandpa left everything to me. There was a long, heavy silence. Then he said, We need to talk about this in person, son. This is a family matter. Something about his tone made my stomach turn. 2 days later, they showed up at my apartment without warning. I opened the door, and there they were. Dad in an expensive suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Mom in a designer dress dripping with jewelry from her rich husband. And speaking of which, she brought him. Douglas. Also a lawyer. Also someone I barely knew. They walked into my tiny apartment like they owned the place, settling onto my old, worn-out couch, as if they were sitting in a boardroom. My dad started with the fake concern. Ahmad, we are here because we care about you. I almost laughed. They had not cared about me in 15 years, but suddenly a few $1,000,000 changed everything. Mom jumped in with the emotional manipulation. Sweetheart, you are still so young. You do not understand how complicated money like this can be. I was 27 years old, had a college degree and a stable job, but apparently I was too young to manage my own inheritance. Then Douglas pulled out a folder. Inside were legal documents all prepared and ready to go. Power of attorney forms that would give my parents complete control over the money. We will invest it properly, Dad said, his lawyer voice in full effect. And when you are ready, maybe in 10 or 15 years, it will be even bigger. You can thank us then. I looked at the papers. Then I looked at them. These people who had abandoned me, who had made it clear I was a burden, who had missed every important moment of my life. Now they wanted to manage my money. This does not feel right, I said quietly. My dad's face hardened. You are being ungrateful, Ahmad. We are your parents. We are trying to help you. My mom started crying, fake tears that did not reach her eyes. After everything we have been through, you do not trust us. I wanted to scream. What had we been through? They were never there. But I kept my voice steady. I need time to think about it. The temperature in the room dropped. Dad stood up, straightening his tie. You will regret this, Ahmad. You do not know how cruel the world is. You need us. They left, but I knew this was not over. The moment the door closed, I felt like I could not breathe. I called Mr. Harrison immediately. They want me to sign over power of attorney, I told him. There was a pause. Then he said something that changed everything. Your grandfather anticipated this. He put protections in the will for exactly this reason. Do not sign anything. If they try to take legal action, call me immediately. The next week was psychological warfare. My dad called me every single day, sometimes multiple times. He would use legal jargon trying to intimidate me. As your parents, we have legal standing in matters like this. You are making a mistake that could cost you everything. Mom took a different approach. She would call late at night, crying, telling me how much she loved me, how she only wanted what was best for me. I gave birth to you, Ahmad. Does not that mean anything? Each call felt like a knife. They sent emails, long, detailed emails about all the ways I was going to fail, about how young people always waste inheritances, about how I would end up broke and alone. Then they started talking badly about Grandpa. Dad was old and confused at the end. He did not know what he was doing when he made that will. We should contest it. Hearing them disrespect the man who raised me was almost unbearable. Douglas joined the campaign too. He would send me articles about lottery winners who went bankrupt, about young people who destroyed their lives with sudden wealth. The subtext was clear. You are going to fail. You need us. I stopped sleeping well. The stress was eating me alive. My co-workers at the startup noticed I was off. My best friend Marcus pulled me aside one day. "Man, you look terrible. What is going on?" I told him everything. He shook his head. "You need to set boundaries. These people are toxic." But it got worse. One afternoon, my parents showed up at my workplace. They walked right past reception and found me at my desk. In front of my entire team, my mom made a scene. She started crying, telling my boss that I was depressed, that I was not myself since Grandpa died, that I needed help. My dad played the concerned father, suggesting I was not stable enough to be working. I was mortified. My boss, Jennifer, was understanding, but I could see the concern in her eyes. After they left, I had to sit down with HR and explain that my parents were trying to manipulate me to get access to my inheritance. It was humiliating. They did not stop there. They started calling my friends people I had not even talked to in years, telling them I was having a mental breakdown. They were building a narrative. Ahmad is unstable. Ahmad cannot handle this. Ahmad needs intervention. I felt like I was being buried alive. Then one night, I overheard something I was not supposed to hear. I had gone to my dad's office to try one more time to talk rationally with him. I got there early and heard him on the phone with Douglas through the door. "We file for conservatorship, claim he is mentally incompetent to manage the estate. We have been gathering evidence, the stress at work, the insomnia. We can make it stick." My blood ran cold. They were planning to sue me, to claim I was mentally unfit, to take control of everything. I left before they saw me and drove straight to Mr. Harrison's office. When I told him what I heard, he did not look surprised. He pulled out a folder. "Your grandfather was a very smart man, Ahmad. Sit down. We need to talk about what is really in that will." He explained that Grandpa Walter had included a specific clause. If any family member tried to contest the will or take legal action to gain control of the inheritance, they would be permanently disqualified from receiving anything from his estate. Ever. "There is more," Mr. Harrison said. "Your grandfather left a small trust, about $200,000, specifically for your father. It was meant to be an olive branch. But the trust is contingent on them not interfering with your inheritance. If they file a lawsuit, they lose that too." I felt tears running down my face. Not because of the money, but because even from beyond the grave, Grandpa was still protecting me. He had known. He had known exactly what they would try to do. "Let them file the lawsuit," Mr. Harrison said. "We will be ready. And when the judge sees what they are doing, they will lose everything." That night, I cried harder than I had since Grandpa died. Not because I was scared, but because I realized my parents had never wanted me as their son. They just wanted the money. They had abandoned me once when I was 12. Now they were trying to steal from me. The little boy inside me who still hoped they might love me finally died. And in his place was someone stronger, someone who would fight. 2 months later, we were standing in Multnomah County Court. I walked in with Mr. Harrison wearing the only suit I owned, one that Grandpa had helped me pick out for job interviews. My hands were shaking. Then I saw them. My parents arrived like they were attending a gala. Dad in a $1,000 suit. Mom in designer everything. Douglas leading a team of 3 expensive lawyers. They were laughing, confident, nodding to each other like this was already over. They looked at me like I was a child playing dress-up, like the money was already theirs. That image will stay with me forever. My parents arrived like royalty, nodding along, smiling at their lawyers, completely sure of themselves. They thought the $4.85 million estate was already in their pockets. Then Judge Thompson entered. She was a woman in her early 50s with sharp eyes and an expression that gave nothing away. Everyone stood. The bailiff called the court to order. Douglas started with their case. He painted me as an emotional wreck, unstable, depressed, incapable of making sound decisions. They brought in a former coworker who they had coached to say I seemed distracted at work. They brought in receipts from a therapist I had seen once after Grandpa died, twisting it to make it look like I was falling apart. My mom took the stand and cried. Real-looking tears this time, probably practiced. "I am his mother," she said. "I just want to protect him from making terrible mistakes. He is too young, too naive. He needs guidance." My dad spoke next, his lawyer voice smooth and practiced. "Your Honor, my father was elderly. While I loved him dearly, he was not in the best state of mind in his final years. Ahmad is a good kid, but he is 27 years old with no experience managing significant wealth. We are simply asking for the court to appoint us as conservators of the estate until Ahmad is mature enough to handle it responsibly." They were good. I will give them that. If I did not know the truth, I might have believed them myself. Then it was our turn. Mr. Harrison stood up slowly. He did not rush. He laid out the will page by page. He showed that every signature was witnessed, every document notarized, everything legal and binding. Then he did something I was not expecting. He pulled out a sealed envelope. "Your Honor, my client Walter anticipated that there might be a challenge to this will. He wrote this letter and instructed me to present it to the court if his son or daughter-in-law ever tried to claim the estate." Judge Thompson opened the envelope. She read silently for what felt like forever. Her expression darkened. She looked up at my parents with something that might have been disgust. "Mr. Harrison, please read this letter aloud for the record." Mr. Harrison took the letter and began. It was Grandpa's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. "To any judge reading this, my name is Walter. And if you are reading this, it means my son Richard and his ex-wife Patricia are trying to take from my grandson what I have rightfully left him. I need you to understand something. When my grandson Ahmad was 12 years old, Richard and Patricia divorced. Neither of them wanted custody of their son. They both argued in court to avoid taking him. I took Ahmad in because no one else would. I raised him. I fed him. I taught him. I loved him. Richard chose his career over his child every single time. Patricia chose her new wealthy husband over her son without hesitation. For 15 years, they had nothing to do with Ahmad's life. No birthdays, no graduations, no phone calls, nothing. Mr. Harrison continued reading. "I am leaving my entire estate to Ahmad because he earned it. Not through blood, but through loyalty, love, and being there when no one else was. I know Richard and Patricia will come for this money the moment I am gone. That is why I am including a clause. If they contest this will, if they try to manipulate or coerce Ahmad, if they take any legal action to gain control of what is his, they will lose everything, including the trust I had set aside as a final gesture of goodwill. They will get nothing. Not one penny. Not now. Not ever. Ahmad deserves peace. He deserves to build his life without them poisoning it. Protect him, Your Honor. That is all I ask." The courtroom was completely silent. I saw my mom's face drain of color. My dad sat frozen in his chair. They had not known about the letter. Mr. Harrison then presented evidence of my stability. My college transcripts, letters from my employer, my detailed business plan for using the inheritance to start a socially conscious tech company, my bank statements showing I had been financially responsible with my own money, character references from friends and colleagues. He presented everything that showed I was not only capable but deserving. Then Judge Thompson asked if I wanted to speak. My throat was tight, but I stood up. Your Honor, I do not need my parents to manage my life because they never did in the first place. They left me when I was 12. My grandfather became my parent. He taught me about integrity, about hard work, about what real love looks like. This money is not just money. It is Grandpa's trust in me. It is his belief that I can do something good with it. My parents do not want to protect me. They want to control something that was never theirs to begin with. I loved my grandfather. I will honor his wishes. That is all I have to say. My voice cracked on the last sentence, but I got through it. Judge Thompson looked at the papers in front of her. Then she looked at my parents with eyes like ice. This was the moment everything changed. Mr. Richard, Mrs. Patricia, she began. Her voice was clear and firm. I have reviewed all the documents presented. Walter's will is crystal clear and legally sound. He had every right to leave his estate to his grandson. The evidence shows that Ahmad is a responsible, educated young man with a solid plan for this inheritance. Your claims of incompetence are unfounded and frankly offensive. She paused. My parents looked nervous now. The confident smiles were gone. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. Furthermore, the will contains a specific clause. Any family member who contests this inheritance through legal action will forfeit any and all rights to any portion of the estate now and in perpetuity. By filing this lawsuit, you have not only lost this case, but you have also permanently disqualified yourselves from ever claiming any part of Walter's estate, including the small trust he had set aside for you before he learned of your intentions. One sentence. That is all it took. Until one sentence from the judge erased those smiles forever. Patricia made a choking sound. Richard stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. They had not only lost, they had lost everything. The trust that could have been theirs, the $200,000, was gone, vanished, because of their own greed. Judge Thompson brought down her gavel. Ahmad retains full control of the inheritance. This case is dismissed. And let me add one personal note. Walter sounds like he was an exceptional man who made the right choice. I hope you honor his memory well, young man. The gavel hit the bench with a final decisive crack. It was over. Mr. Harrison put his hand on my shoulder. I could barely stand. My parents tried to approach me as we left the courtroom. My mother was crying real tears this time. Ahmad, please, we can talk about this. We made a mistake. My father looked furious, but there was desperation in his eyes, too. Son, do not do this. We are still your family. I looked at them, really looked at them, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just emptiness where they used to be. You stopped being my family when you dropped me off at Grandpa's house and never looked back. Goodbye. Mr. Harrison guided me past them and out of the courthouse. Behind me, I heard my mother wailing. I heard my father shouting at Douglas, blaming him for this disaster. But I did not turn around. I walked into the sunlight and felt the weight lift off my shoulders. It was finally over. The months that followed were strange, peaceful but strange. I used part of the inheritance to start my own business, a small tech company focused on creating affordable educational software for underserved communities. It was something I had dreamed about for years, but never thought I could afford to do. Grandpa always said that real wealth was not in having money, but in using it to make things better. So that is what I did. I also set up a fund for kids in foster care and group homes, kids like me, who needed someone to believe in them. Every year, the fund would provide scholarships, mentorship programs, and support services. I named it the Walter Foundation. I bought back Grandpa's house. It had been sold to settle some final expenses before the will went through, but I tracked down the new owners and made them an offer they could not refuse. I moved in and spent weeks restoring it. I kept his workshop exactly the way he left it. Sometimes I would go in there and just sit surrounded by his tools, breathing in the smell of sawdust, and feel close to him again. My parents tried to contact me dozens of times. Emails, letters, phone calls from numbers I did not recognize. They apologized. They begged. They promised they had changed. I never responded. I blocked every number, returned every letter unopened. Marcus asked me once if I felt bad about it. I told him the truth. Not for a single second. I started attending a support group for people who had been abandoned by their parents. It helped to talk to others who understood what it felt like to be thrown away by the people who were supposed to love you most. That is where I met Layla. She volunteered at the community center where the group met. She had been in foster care herself as a kid and now spent her time helping others heal. We started talking after one of the meetings. Then we started having coffee. Then dinner. Slowly, carefully, I let someone in. It was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. She understood my scars because she had her own. The business grew steadily. Nothing explosive but solid and sustainable. I hired people who believed in the mission, who wanted to do good work for the right reasons. I kept my lifestyle simple. I still lived in Grandpa's house. I still drove the old truck he taught me to fix. I invested wisely, saved carefully, and gave generously. The money was a tool, not an identity. I thought about what Grandpa had written in his letter. Protect him. Give him peace. That is what this inheritance had done. It had given me the resources to build a life on my own terms, free from people who only saw me as a means to an end. One evening, I was sitting in Grandpa's workshop, sanding down a piece of wood for a bookshelf I was building. My hands moved the way he had taught me, steady and patient. I thought about everything that had happened. The inheritance, the lawsuit, the final confrontation in court. And I realized something. The greatest gift Grandpa left me was not the money. It was the lesson that I was worth fighting for, that I deserved to be loved without conditions, that I did not owe anyone my peace of mind, not even family. Especially not family who only showed up when there was something in it for them. People ask me sometimes if I regret cutting off my parents. The answer is always the same. Not for a second. Protecting yourself from toxic people is not selfish. It is necessary. It is survival. Grandpa taught me that in his final act of love. He knew they would come. He knew they would try to take what he had worked so hard to give me. And he made sure they could not. He gave me permission to choose myself, to walk away from people who hurt me even if they shared my blood. That permission was worth more than any dollar amount. I put the finishing touches on the bookshelf and stood back to look at it. It was not perfect. The joints were a little uneven. The finish had a few rough spots, but it was mine. I built it with my own hands using the skills Grandpa taught me in the workshop, where he spent his life creating things. I thought about the future, about the company growing, about the kids the foundation would help, about Layla and where that relationship might go, about all the possibilities that lay ahead because I was finally free to choose my own path. The sun was setting outside the workshop window, casting long golden shadows across the floor. I walked outside and stood in the yard where Grandpa and I used to plant tomatoes every spring. The air was cool and clean. I felt grateful. Not just for the money, but for the chance to live a life that honored the man who saved me. I pulled out my phone and looked at a photo of Grandpa and me from my college graduation. He was grinning his arm around my shoulders, proud as could be. I whispered, "Thank you for everything. I promise I will make you proud." If you are watching this and facing something similar, remember this. The people who truly love you will never make you choose between your well-being and their approval. Real family shows up not when there is something to gain, but when there is nothing to offer but love. And sometimes the hardest battles you fight are the ones that set you free. Walking away from my parents was the hardest thing I ever did, but it was also the moment I finally started living for myself. That freedom is priceless. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic family members? How did you find the strength? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I would love to hear your stories. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. And do not forget to subscribe, because I will keep sharing real stories about navigating the messy, complicated parts of life. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there find their own courage. Stay strong, stay true to yourself, and remember that you deserve peace. Take care.